And one of the one things I hate getting asked the most is how many people did you kill? That's like the most heartless thing you can ask anybody. And my response is always the same thing. I don't remember the amount of people I killed, I just remember the amount I saved and the amount I lost. Where do we start? So let's see, I lived in Vegas from when I was 6. At 6, I moved with my mom to Minnesota. Um, the age of 6, no, not 6, I would say 8. 8 to 14, I was sent every summer to my grandparents, and I would have to work on their farm in Mississippi. And during that time, my mom met her current husband, who wasn't a nice man. Not a nice man at all. A very angry man. Uh, Around 14, my little sister was born, and that's when I really found out how I was perceived in my mother and my stepfather's eyes. To my mother, I was nothing but a burden and a cash cow. To my stepfather, I was a nobody. I was pretty much someone who lived in his house and was his significant other's child, but I wasn't perceived as his son. I used to get the crap beaten out of me for not doing chores by my stepfather, while my mother would watch and not say anything. Uh, I was a very depressed child. Um, Also, at a very young age, I was diagnosed with so many mental illnesses and put on so many different drugs, only to find out that it was my mother's doing. That she would go and tell my psychologist all these different things, and the psychologist wouldn't double check. They would just believe her because, well, she's your guardian. She knows better. And it took the psychologist I was seeing leaving and getting a whole new psychologist for him to look at my chart, sit down and talk to me for 30 minutes to ban my mother from ever walking in one of our sessions again. She had to literally sit outside the room. Got me off all the drugs, but shortly afterwards, I didn't see the psychologist anymore. My mother never had time. The age of 15, I got a job. 3/4 of my paycheck would go to my mother. And at first, I didn't realize how much money was going to my mom. I was thinking, oh, cool, I got $150 at the age of 15 to go spend on whatever I want. Yeah, little did I know how much I was actually making until when I was 16. I got into it with my stepfather, and he disowned me, tried to disown me. And I moved in with my uncle, and we went to close out my bank account, which my mother had literally closed after she had dropped me off at my uncle's house, which was all the way down to Mississippi from Minnesota. That's a 10-hour drive. So on the way back from her round trip drive, she closed out my bank account, and there was over $5,000 in there. I don't have a good relationship with my mother, and I never will, for the simple fact she's very manipulative. Nothing's ever her fault. And she won't admit it, but everybody in my family knows. I honestly think she despised me because I look like my father, but I can't tell you what my father looks like because my mother will never tell me who my father is.
She never told you.
No.
How so?
How so? I asked about who my father was from the age of 14 to 18. And the subject would get, skipped over, or she wouldn't acknowledge the subject, or she would just say, oh, he's a very bad man. And then on my 18th birthday, my grandmother asked me, she's like, is there anything you want to know? You're 18, you're an adult. Ask me anything and I will try to give you an answer if I can remember. And I straight up asked my grandmother who my dad was. And sadly, she didn't know his name, but she told me about him. And she told me about my mother and growing up. And some of the stories my mom told me, I realized weren't true. I can't first say exactly what those stories were anymore, but I just remembered looking at my grandmother and just being like completely flabbergasted. Now, if I got to meet my father, I don't think I would respect the man because he deserted the military.
He deserted.
He deserted. I guess he had an anger problem. I guess something happened to a family member and they wouldn't let him leave, so he hopped on a commercial flight back home and left his post. Which, me being a military person, there's no reason for it. There's no reason for leaving your post. It's against one of the general orders. It's against one of the values of the military. And to leave your post without anything, it's called going AWOL, and he went AWOL. So I have no respect for someone who can dishonor the military like that. He was Air Force. He was over in the heck is that place? Desert Storm. He was doing Desert Storm, and he went AWOL.
Overseas.
Yep, overseas. He went AWOL, found a plane back to the U.S., and then disappeared. That's the story everybody tells me, but like I said, nobody will give me the man's name. And any person that did know him can't remember his name, quote unquote, supposedly.
It sounds like this is like a family secret that they're trying to keep.
Sounds like it. Do I know? No. Do I really care? I mean, I would for my medical history. That'd be great. I would love to know for my medical history. But in the end, I'm 32 years old. He's never been a part of my life. And I'm pretty sure it turned out all right. I got my quirks. I got my flaws. But I'm nothing like him. And that's all that matters to me.
I mean, what came afterwards, after your 18th birthday?
Oh, let's see. I moved in with a few friends. That didn't go well. Well, I guess I missed a big part. I became emancipated at an extremely young age. No child should become emancipated around the age of 16. Being that age and being your own guardian, you end up getting into a lot of stupid stuff. You don't have the sense of responsibility. So I partied a lot. I drank a lot. Did drugs. I mean, I did everything that a dumb teenager would do without adults around. And finally, after I think it was like 4 weeks of just doing nonstop partying, I had to take a look in the mirror and realize if I don't figure out something to do, I'm either going to be 6 feet under or behind bars. So, join the military. And it was the greatest decision of my life.
So when did you make that great decision?
2010, 2011, I enlisted. So I was about early 20s. Yeah, early 20s. Right after my 21st birthday. I spent 4 years in. Met a lot of great guys. Had a lot of great friends. Got my good old PTSD from it. And then got forced out. And one of the things people say is don't live your life with regrets. And through all the bullshit that I've been through, I don't live my life with regrets, because if I change one aspect of anything, I lose the family that I have built today.
So you wouldn't change a bit?
Nope. You got to go through the struggles. You got to go through everything to get where I am today. And if I change one thing, it could alter anything. The only thing I can do is look forward. Because if I'm stuck in the past, I'm just going to relive the past. That's why I say, I don't think I'll ever have a relationship with my mother. Do I want a relationship with my mother? No, it's a so-so situation. But the crap that happened to me as a kid, I'm not going to hold it on to baggage, because then it's going to get put onto my kids. I'm not for the generational trauma. No generational trauma for my kids. I'm not going to, like, if they ask me about their grandma, I tell them where their grandma lives. That's all I can really say. They ask me about their aunt, same thing. I don't have any relationship with them, but I'm not going to, talk bad about them, because maybe down the road my kids can grow a relationship with their grandma or their aunt. It's a part of my life. It's a part of my chapter of my life that's pretty much closed, and there's no point in reopening it.
It's done. It's done. Let bygone be bygones.
And I think that's also another big issue with society, is we all live in the past. You see entire livelihood because of something they did in their past. It was their past. They're older now. They're either more mature or dumber, whichever one. But you can't judge somebody by their past. You have to judge them by the now, what they do in today's world, not what they did when they were a teenager, or not what they did 10 years ago. Because if that's the case, I'm not a good person. Okie dokie, so here we go. Since I'm in a kind of depressing mood, I'm going to tell you the one thing that I can never get over. It's actually a cause of my PTSD, a major cause of my PTSD, a major cause of my guilt from wartime. So it was my first deployment, best friend from AIT. We got deployed together. 7 years, first deployment. First deployment was in July of 2016. Oh, sorry. Maybe 7? Sorry, July of 2012. Kabul, Afghanistan, a small village, 2 clicks outside of Kabul. In the middle of the afternoon. Lost 3 guys that day. 2 of them I didn't know, one of them being my best friend. And I barely remember the firefight. I just remember the mist. And running my hand across my face and just seeing red. I thought I got hit for a second. I still remember the smell of the air. I still remember the smell of iron and gunpowder. But it happened in the middle of a small village, in the middle of the street. We were going through on a patrol when a shot hit the front window of the convoy, and then something exploded to the left of us. And at that point, we figured that it'd be better to stand by and take cover, and that's what we did. When we got out of the Humvee, I turned to my left and looked, and he was just standing there in a daze as bullets were literally whizzing past our head. And it's funny because, sitting at basic training in AIT, we're all gun ho. We'll never get shell shocked. We'll fight through it. We'll never be that guy. You hear stories about the word shell shock, which means you
lose all sense of reality when you're in a battle. You either like crouch down in a ball and turn into the fetal position, or you just stand there because you don't know what's going on because the shock of war has hit you. If anybody ever tells you they never got shell shocked in their first firefight, they're lying. They did either one of two things. Well, one of three things, I should say. They pissed themselves, they froze, or somehow, some way, they fought through it. And that's a fact. I've never heard any story about someone's first firefight where they've never either pissed themselves, thrown up, or froze. Well, the first time I experienced shell shock wasn't me experiencing it. It was me losing a friend with one of the worst firefights I've ever been part of. And thanks to my drill sergeants being all former infantry, they drilled into my head, you know, if you're standing still, you're dead. Fight to the last breath. So when it hit, I kind of blacked out, but my training kicked in. For my best friend, it was different. He was standing in the middle of a firefight, just standing there, stunned, dazed, didn't know what to do, fumbling with everything. And for whatever reason, he wanted to know where the enemy was. Instead of just getting into cover, he wanted to know where the enemy was. So I grabbed the back of his backpack, well, our gear. So it's not technically backpack, flak jacket, which is like our bulletproof vest, but it's plates. And I threw him and myself up against the Humvee door. And I had a hold of his collar, and because all I could feel was him trying to look over the top of the hood of the Humvee. And I kept pulling him down every time he kept looking, while also returning fire at the same time. And at that point, I don't know, we'd been in the firefight for at least what felt like forever, but it was only like 5 minutes. I had already went through 5 mags and I was coming on to my last mag, so I hollered for a mag. And the guy to my left, threw me a mag, and it was just slightly out of reach, so I let go of my buddy for all of 10 seconds to catch that mag so I could keep it on me. And in that 10 seconds, pretty much my entire world stopped. All of a sudden, I felt a warm mist on my face. And then I looked to my left, and Grotham was no more. He took 2 to the head. He was no longer recognizable. And till the day that I die, I will blame myself, even though I know it's not my fault, that's the casualties of war. If I had kept holding on to him and not tried to grab the mag that was flying through the air, you know, he would still be alive. And I every day I tell myself that, and I've come to accept that he'll never come home. But those 3 seconds could have changed so much. If the guy had handed me the mag, I don't know. It's something that I will forever live with. It's one of the major guilts of surviving, because technically I was keeping him alive, and I let go of him for all 3 seconds. He stood up and took 2 to the head. I killed 6 people that day, because after Gotham fell, I blacked out, and I went AWOL, like Lord of the Rings style. You know, when Frodo gets stabbed and everybody just goes like superhuman. But apparently I charged I guess, bodega or deli that was in front of us. I charged it balls to the walls, took 2 out, and put a grenade through the front of it. Firefight was all of 15 minutes. Still feels like to this day it was almost 5 hours long. Oh yeah, I puked. I puked for the days long. When the adrenaline wore off and we were sitting in the barracks, yeah, I cried. I puked. I broke again. pretty much. Mentally broke again. Difference being this time I had the skills, the training, and the knowledge to pick myself up and get back to work. That's pretty much what I did. To the point that when we got back to base, I got screamed at for leaving cover. I got an attaboy, but I also got told if I ever did that again, they'd make sure I was on the first plane home. Told them I didn't remember anything. And then they told me again, they had to tell me again that Gotham didn't come home. And then I remembered that instant, and that's the only instance I really remember. I don't remember anything afterwards. That's one of my darkest demons of being deployed. And I don't, I've come to cope with it, but I don't know if I've truly accepted that it's not my fault. I say it, but in reality, I don't think I will ever accept that it's not my fault, because I was keeping him alive. I had a hold of him. I knew he wasn't there, but in the heat of the moment, I let go. Pretty much, like I said, if it wasn't for those 3 drill sergeants that I had, that fucking beat the living ever shit out of me and made me push to the furthest extent that they possibly could, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today. They knew what we were in for. They made sure we were going to survive it. Yeah, I know, it's a lot more information than you got last time, but depression does that to you. You remember every sound, scream, worst part was I didn't get to even go to his funeral. That was the first week of my 8-month deployment, so I never got to go to his funeral. I got to visit his grave, but I never actually got to lay my best friend to rest. I mean, I know deep down he would understand. We had our duty and our job to do.
What would you say to someone who's still stuck in the past? How would you, I guess, guide them?
Is it worth it? That's what I would ask them. Is it worth it? Is it worth wondering what could have been and watching everything that you can possibly do now pass you by? Is it worth stressing yourself out of things that you should have changed when you have the ability to change them now? The what ifs will never get you anywhere in life. It's the what you do's.
Sounds
I
like
mean,
a huge
I
struggle.
just now got over that. Oh, it was strong. It was very, very strong. It wasn't just it came out, it was still embedded in me. I don't think people understand it takes a while to get back into civilian life. Not having the order and someone telling me what to do all the time really messed with my head for a while.
Wow, that must have been challenging, though. I mean, you said just now you overcome it.
Oh, yeah. Because if I rely on somebody else, what am I going to get out of it? Yeah, I'll get their advice, but they're not going to be able to hold my hand. They're not going to always be there. So either I overcome it or I let it defeat me. Are you going to let anything defeat me?
I mean, how did you overcome it? You
I
have
went to a therapist and I got the help I need. I used to be a very closed off person and bottle everything up and never talk to anybody and be frustrated. But, I realized it was time to ask for help. Well, when I talked to my therapist, I didn't say, oh, I need your help. I said, be real with me. What can I do? And my therapist was amazing. Not all therapists are like this, but my therapist was straight up, I'm going to tell you what you can do. You can take my advice, you can learn from my advice, or you could just tell me to fuck off. In the end, I'm just here to guide you. You can only take the steps that you need. And he was right. He would ask me how would I approach the situation. I would explain how I should approach the situation. And he's like, why are you even seeing me? You have the tools you need. Now you just need to put them in effect. Every so often I still, reach out for help when things get stressful at home. But I know that I also have the tools and I don't need to rely on him.
You don't need to rely on him anymore.
No, in general, I don't need to rely on him. When things get really, really rough and I can't figure out a solution, that's when I'll call him up and be like, hey, can I get a session in? I've got things I need to try to figure out. Right now I'm so overwhelmed I can't figure it out. And we'll have one session maybe every 5 months, 6 months. Yeah, I know that I can't rely on him. He can't hold my hand and walk me through life. He can give me the steps and the tools to get through life, but if I don't utilize those steps or tools, I'm just going to be stuck forever in a world of sorrow and hate and anger, and that's not healthy.
If someone in front of you was a vet and is struggling with acceptance and with the past, I mean, from vet to vet, what would you, I guess, say to him or want him or her?
That's the hard thing. When it comes to veterans, there's nothing you can say or do. It really is. I mean, you can always be there for them. You can say you'll be there for them, but the way our minds have been rewired to think and to work, the only thing you can do is be there for them. You can try to talk to them, but most vets won't talk about what happened. And if they do, they're only going to talk to another vet. You can try to get them the help, but if they're stubborn, they ain't going to want the help. Mental health in its own is such a foreign ideology to people, but yet we act like we understand every aspect of it, and we don't even understand a tenth of it. We'd rather just throw someone on a drug and say that this is going to fix the problem, when in reality it's not. You're just masking the problem. Oh, when you throw someone on antidepressants, yeah, sure, it helps with how they feel. But are you actually getting down to the root core of why they feel so depressed? Let me throw you on some Xanax, okay? Every time you take a Xanax, you feel up. But the moment that Xanax wears out, you feel like shit. I think as the world, we need to better study mental health. And trying to help a vet is, I think, one of the main things we need to study, because doesn't matter, if you saw combat or if you didn't see combat. There's so much trauma that you go through in the military, and I'm not saying it's all trauma. I want to make that perfectly clear. It's not all trauma, but there's a lot of stuff that you go through that changes the way you think, changes the way you socialize with people, changes the way you perceive the world. And then when you get out, it's like, hey, thanks for serving. Bye. Have a fun time. Trying to reintegrate back into civilian life, especially if you've seen combat. We're not meant to kill each other. We're really not. If you stop and think about it, we're really not built to kill each other. We're built to survive, but not just to go out to a battlefield and willingly kill each other. And then we have to live with that. We have to live with the fact that we took another life. And yes, we get told that you did it because it was your job. You did it to protect your brothers or sisters. You did it for this or this reason. But the people that usually are saying that don't have to live with that fact. And the ones that have done it, let's say that, tell you also, like, it's hard. But sooner or later, you'll overcome it. Don't let it defeat you. And one of the things I hate getting asked the most is, how many people did you kill? That's like the most heartless thing you can ask anybody. And my response is always the same thing. I don't remember the amount of people I killed, I just remember the amount I saved and the amount I lost. Because that's what lives with us. It's not the amount of people that we killed. Yeah, they haunt our dreams, but it's the people that we lost. You lost overseas, you lost on home soil to suicide. That's the stuff that lives with you. Soil to suicide. That's the stuff that lives with you. The guilt that comes with that. Knowing that they were brothers in arms and you could have maybe done something different or anything like that. That's what lives with you. In my world, I guess I should say, in my opinion, my perspective, because I can't speak for other vets. Every vet is different. Every vet has their vice and their demons. But I know survivor guilt is a big part of it. Survivor's guilt. You survived, others didn't. So you think about it constantly and you live with that fact.
So, what was your fact?
I've lost many friends. And the worst part is I lost more friends on home soil than I did overseas. Because people stopped caring. And then the infuriating fact is, like, yeah, I would hear some of the stories of what was happening to them before, they decided to unalive themselves. And just hearing the stories, it's like they were clearly asking for help, or there was clearly something wrong. But people would be like, "Oh, I saw no signs of it." Dude sold a car that he helped build with his dad. Other dude sold a dog that he raised from a puppy. You don't see no sign of it? It's because you're stuck in your world. You're not paying attention to the people around you. We've been friends for a while, Balance. How many times have you hopped into a party and I've been like, "You good? Something wrong? Are you okay?" Or you've told me about something that's going on in your life, and I'm like, "Hey, how's that going? Is everything okay?"
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're someone that matters in my life, and every so often you got to check on that person. And if they tell you that they're fine, but you can hear it in their voice or not, don't be afraid to be like, "No, what's wrong? What's actually wrong?" But we just take the word fine and we're like, "Oh, okay, they must be fine." I've learned to do that with my wife's mental illness. My wife has a very tough mental illness. It's not my story to tell, but I've had to learn how to be more observant.
Well, speaking of, hey, how are you doing? Let me ask you this as well. How are you really doing right now?
Me, I'm stressed out of my mind. Like, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, thankfully. But yeah, I gotta get there. You know, I gotta work my way there, slowly but surely. But with the way this economy is, the way the politics are, the way the school systems are, having 2 kids in this world, oh yeah, I'm stressed out of my mind. Being a sole provider because my wife can't work due to her mental illness, everything's on my shoulder. I'm not gonna lie, 90% of the time, I feel like Atlas.
You feel like Atlas?
Yeah, from Roman mythology. Holds the whole weight of the world on his shoulders. I don't really know the myth, like the whole mythology behind it, but Atlas is, you've probably seen the statue, but it's the guy who's literally got the weight of the world on his shoulder and he's holding the whole world up. That's how I feel. Some days in my life, I stress to no end. Don't eat, don't sleep, because I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to pay the next bill. Trying to figure out how I'm going to, pay my daughter's tuition for school. But I'm thankful because I have help in my life. I'm not afraid to, step out of my comfort zone nowadays, because I used to just bottle everything up. But now, I'm not afraid to step out of my comfort zone and ask my father-in-law, hey, can you help here? I don't rely on his help, but it's nice to know that I have that safety net every once in a while when things get way over my head. I still go to work every day. I still pick up overtime.
Question. So, how would you ask your father-in-law for help? I imagine a lot of people also have that difficulty.
Honestly, I just swallow my pride and I ask for help. I will straight up be like, look, money's tight. I can get my 3/4 of my bills. Can you help me pay this cell phone bill? And then when it comes tax time and I get my tax return, I pay him back everything that I borrowed throughout the year. When I had my back surgery, my wife can't work. I was relying on disability pay, and that was not even covering half the bills. Oh, but through all this, I want to make something perfectly clear. That I'm not saying you're weak for getting help if you need help. And I'm not saying that it's, bad to rely on help. But I'm also saying you can't survive on it. You have to be able to take care of yourself in the end. Because that person who's doing everything to push you through life, what happens when they leave? Are you going to fall apart, or are you going to stand on your own 2 feet? And most people are going to fall apart. Bad as it is, in my perspective, I see most people who fall apart that just rely on nothing but help. They don't know how to stand on their own 2 feet.
When did you stand on your own 2 feet?
15, 16. Once I got kicked out of my mom's house and I got sent down south and, started living with them and became a 24/7 babysitter for them when I was promised a bunch of stuff and decided to move out on my own, that's when I really had to learn. I became homeless at one point in my life. But I never blamed anybody for that. I blamed myself because I didn't prepare myself. I thought, I was a big man and I could take care of myself. I had to learn how to take care of myself.
Oh,
Now, don't get me wrong.
The hard way.
Oh yeah, I definitely learned the hard way. But the hard way made me into the man I am today, and I wouldn't change it. I'd go through sleeping in the bathrooms. I'd go through, couch surfing for the year I did. I'd go through it all again. Every last aspect. Every last aspect. Because if I change one thing, I might not be where I am today. Sure, there's a possibility I could be in a better mindset and have a better life and, be financially stable. Or there's a possibility that I have a worse life. I don't have my kids. I don't have my support system. And, I'm on the street corner selling drugs, or I'm stuck in jail, or I'm in an abusive relationship. I mean, there's so many outcomes that there's no point in being stuck in the past. I mean, when it all comes down to it, my past is my past. It made me who I am. I'm grateful for everything that happened, no matter how good or how bad.
So, Jay-Z, who are you?
Who am I? That's a good question. I'm a father of 2. I'm a devoted husband. I'm a no bullshit kind of guy with the guardian mentality. I'm gonna say I'm relaxed. I'm down to earth and willing to accept anybody and everybody for their ideology or their perception in life. Just don't force it on me. Meaning, if you're part of the LGBTQ community, that's great. All the power to you. But don't make it a part of my life. Don't try to make me believe in what you believe in. Don't try to push it down my throat. You believe what you want, I'll believe what I want, and let bygones be bygones. One of there are two quotes that I've heard in my life. One was given to me by a history teacher, and one of them I have read. One of them is, "You're never too old to learn. Every day you learn something new." And the second quote is, "Those who do not learn from the past will be doomed to repeat it." That's how I feel philosophic. I didn't realize, sometimes I forget, not too much, I don't know how to explain it. Enlightened, I guess. It wasn't I was blaming the past, but I was just more or less focusing on the negative and not the positive aspects of my life. Kind of been in a low place, a little depressed, and kind of reminded me my own perspective and how I need to change it.